All right, guys, Rideshare Guy here, and today I'm going to be tackling a question that I get all the time, right? A lot of new drivers and even a lot of more experienced drivers too. They want to know because they always hear me talk about how I'm always doing Uber and Lyft at the same time, and they always wonder, hey, how do you do that, right? So that's basically the question I'm going to tackle today: how to run Uber and Lyft at the same time on your personal phone, right? So in an earlier video, I covered how to download the Uber Partner app, and obviously you guys should probably know by now if you're on Lyft, it's the same app for passengers and drivers. You'll just hit the wheel in the upper right corner and then boom, you're in driver mode, right? With Uber, you'll actually need a separate app to use that drive to become a driver and to log into driver mode, right? So what I do is typically I usually start at my house, right? So I'm sitting on my couch and I'll log in, right? I check and say, hey, what's Uber like? What's Lyft like? Are they on surge? If one is surging higher than the other or prime timing higher than the other, I'll obviously start with that app and wait for a request, right? So that's the one thing you need to really watch out for when you're doing both apps. You want to make sure that if one is surging, you're only doing that app, especially, if you know Uber and Lyft, the prices are pretty similar. And personally, if the prices are close, I usually tend to prefer Lyft because, I like the quality of the passengers and kind of all the reasons that people like Lyft. And then plus the fact that I think I provide really great service and really over the top stuff, just as far, I don't do a ton of giveaways, but, just as a driver. And I find that experience on Lyft, I tend to get more tips because of that. And obviously the tipping screen on Lyft is much easier for passengers. And I just kind of like supporting, a better UI for drivers. So that's what I do. But so let's say I'm sitting on my couch at home, and I turn on my Uber app, I turn on my Lyft app, right? As soon as I get one request on one, I'll accept it. So let's say I get an Uber request first. I accept that Uber request, and before I do anything else, I switch over to Lyft. As soon as I'm in Lyft, I log out of Lyft. So there's really only about 1 to 3 seconds where I'm logged into both. Now, people always ask me, what happens if you get a request, while you're trying to switch over or whatever on Lyft after you've already accepted an Uber request? Now, that definitely has happened once or twice, but one of the ways that I try to avoid that is I only use this strategy when it's not super busy, right? So if it's not super busy, I'll try to just do one app, right? If I only am waiting 1 to 2 minutes in between calls, I'll pick one or the other. I'll either pick Uber or I'll pick Lyft, kind of based on the surge and based on where I am, right? So those are the things you want to consider. If it's real slam and busy, you're going to have a tough time switching back and forth from Uber and Lyft anyways, so you might as well just stick with one. If I start waiting longer than a minute or two, boom, I'm going to go and I turn on Lyft. I primarily drive, one or the other, but then I use both. I primarily drive both, but I'll start with always the same thing. I always start with Uber, start with Lyft, and then after 1 to 2 minutes, if I don't get a call, then I turn on the other. And you really won't come up with too many situations where you're getting double calls. If you do, hey, you're already in that situation. You probably want to pick whichever passenger is closer, or if you have a higher surge on Uber or whatever, then you're going to have to pick that passenger and eat the cancellation fee. So that's definitely something to consider when you're running both apps at the same time. Now, real quick, I'm going to touch on Sidecar, because I actually occasionally I'll even run Sidecar at the same time. Now, I won't run Sidecar like I do Uber and Lyft. I'll actually set my Sidecar multiplier higher. So for example, if it's regular pricing right now on Uber and Lyft, I'll bump up my Sidecar multiplier maybe to 1.4, 1.5, or I'll even keep it lower. A lot of times at the end of the day, if I'm trying to get, closer to home, I'll maybe set that drop-off radius anywhere near my house so that way, I can try and find a ride that will at least get me somewhat near my house, maybe even lower the multiplier, and I'll just keep doing Uber and Lyft rides. And then sometimes I'll even leave Sidecar on because you can probably accept that Sidecar request and finish off your Uber and Lyft before moving on to the next. So it's really, it takes a little bit of practice doing Uber and Lyft at the same time, but it's definitely doable, definitely possible. And the reason why you want to do Uber and Lyft at the same time is really to maximize your opportunities, right? Think about you're a business owner, right? You want to diversify your income. And, I would rather, let's say Lyft pays me 10% less than Uber. I would rather take a Lyft ride than sit there waiting for an Uber request for 10 minutes, right? So it's really all about maximizing that time where you can have someone's butt in that seat next to you, okay? So hopefully you guys learned a lot from this video and you can go out there and use these tips on the road.